Chapter 2: The Difference That Makes the Difference. It's a funny thing about life. If you refuse to accept anything but the best, you very often get it. W. Somerset Maugham. He was traveling along the highway at 65 miles an hour when suddenly it happened. Something along the side of the road caught his eye, and when he looked back in the direction in which he was traveling, he had only a second to respond. It was almost too late. The Mack truck in front of him had suddenly come to an unexpected stop. Instantly, in an effort to save his life, he laid his motorcycle down into a sickening skid that seemed to last forever. In agonizingly slow motion, he slid beneath the truck. The gas cap popped off his motorcycle, and the worst occurred. Fuel spilled out and ignited. His next moment of consciousness is the experience of waking up in a hospital bed in searing pain, unable to move, fearing to breathe. 3/4 of his body is covered by terrible third-degree burns. Still, he refuses to give up. He struggles back to life and resumes a business career, only to suffer another staggering blow, an airplane crash that leaves him paralyzed from the waist down for life. In every man and woman's life there comes a time of ultimate challenge, a time when every resource we have is tested, a time when life seems unfair, a time when our faith, our values, our patience, our compassion, our ability to persist are all pushed to our limits and beyond. Some people use such tests as opportunities to become better people. Others allow these experiences of life to destroy them. Have you ever wondered what creates the difference in the way human beings respond to life's challenges? I certainly have. For most of my life, I have been fascinated by what triggers human beings to behave the way they do. For as long as I can remember, I've been obsessed with discovering what sets certain men and women apart from their peers. What creates a leader, an achiever? How is it that there are so many people in this world who live such joyous lives in spite of almost every adversity, while others, who would seem to have it all, live lives of despair, anger, and depression? Let me share another man's story with you, and let's note the differences between the two men. This man's life seems much brighter. He is a fabulously wealthy, enormously talented entertainer with a huge following. At 22, he was the youngest member of Chicago's famed Second City comedy troupe. Almost immediately, he became the show's acknowledged star. Soon, there is a major theatrical hit in New York. He becomes one of the great television successes of the 70s. Then, he becomes one of the nation's hottest film stars. He branches into music and enjoys the same instant success there. He has dozens of admiring friends, a good marriage, wonderful homes in New York City and Martha's Vineyard. He seems to have everything a person could possibly ask for. Which of these two people would you rather be? It's hard to imagine anyone choosing the first life over the second. But let me tell you more about the two people. The first is one of the most vital, strong, and successful people I know. His name is W. Mitchell, and he's alive and well and living in Colorado. Since his terrible motorcycle accident, he's known more success and joy than most people know in a lifetime. He's developed phenomenal personal relationships with some of the most influential people in America. He's become a millionaire in business. He even ran for Congress, despite the fact that his face was grotesquely marked. His campaign slogan, "Send me to Congress, and I won't be just another pretty face." Today, he has a fabulous relationship with a very special woman, and he is happily campaigning for Lieutenant Governor of Colorado in 1986. The second person is someone you knew well, someone who probably brought you a great deal of pleasure and joy. His name was John Belushi. He was one of the most celebrated comedians of our time and one of the great entertainment success stories of the 70s. Belushi was able to enrich countless lives, but not his own. When he died at the age of 33 of what the coroner ruled acute toxicity from cocaine and heroin, few who knew him were surprised. The man who had everything had become a bloated, out-of-control drug abuser, old beyond his years. Externally, he had everything. Internally, he'd been running on empty for years. We see similar examples all the time. Ever hear of Pete Strudwick? Born with no hands and no feet, he has gone on to become a marathon runner who has already run 25,000 miles. Think of Helen Keller's astounding story, or think of Candy Lightner, the founder of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. She took a terrible tragedy, the death of a daughter who was run over by a drunk driver, and she formed an organization that has probably saved hundreds, maybe thousands of lives. At the other extreme, think of people like Marilyn Monroe or Ernest Hemingway, people who had fabulous successes and ended up destroying themselves. So I ask you, what's the difference between the haves and the have-nots? What's the difference between the cans and the can-nots? What's the difference between the do's and the do-nots? Why do some people overcome horrible, unimaginable adversity and make their lives a triumph, while others, in spite of every advantage, turn their lives into a disaster? Why do some people take any experience and make it work for them, while others take any experience and make it work against them? What's the difference between W. Mitchell and John Belushi? What's the difference that makes the difference in the quality of life? I've been obsessed by that question for my entire life. As I grew up, I saw people who had great riches of all types, great jobs, wonderful relationships, and well-developed physiques. I had to know what caused their lives to be so different from mine and that of my friends. The difference all comes down to the way in which we communicate with ourselves and the actions we take. What do we do when we try everything we can and things still turn out wrong? People who succeed do not have fewer problems than people who fail. The only people without problems are those in cemeteries. It is not what happens to us that separates failures from successes. It is how we perceive it and what we do about what happens that makes the difference. When W. Mitchell received the information from his body that 3/4 of it was covered with third-degree burns, he had a choice in how to interpret that information. The meaning of this event could have been a reason to die, to grieve, or anything else he wanted to communicate. He chose to consistently communicate to himself that this experience had occurred for a purpose, and that this would someday provide him with even greater advantages in his goal to make a difference in the world. As a result of this communication with himself, he formed sets of beliefs and values that continued to direct his life from a sense of advantage rather than tragedy, even after he became paralyzed. How was Pete Strudwick able to successfully run Pikes Peak, the most difficult marathon in the world, even though he has no hands and no feet? Simple. He mastered his communication with himself. When his body senses sent him signals that in the past he had interpreted as pain, as limitation, as exhaustion, he simply relabeled their meaning and continued to communicate to his nervous system in a way that kept him running. Things do not change. We change. Henry David Thoreau. What I was always curious about was specifically how people produce results. Long ago, I realized that success leaves clues, that people who produce outstanding results do specific things to create those results. I realized that it was not enough just to know that a W. Mitchell or a Pete Strudwick communicated to themselves in a way that produced results. I had to know specifically how they did it. I believed that if I precisely duplicated the actions of others, I could reproduce the same quality of results that they had. I believed that if I sowed, I would also reap. In other words, if there were someone who could be compassionate, even in the most dire of circumstances, I could find out his strategy, how he looked at things, how he used his body in those situations, and I could become more compassionate. If a man and a woman had developed a successful marriage where for 25 years they still felt deeply in love with each other, I could find out what actions they had taken, what beliefs they had that created that result, and I could adopt those actions and beliefs and produce similar results in my own relationships. In my life, I had produced the result of being extremely overweight. I began to realize that all I needed to do was model people who were thin, find out what they ate, how they ate, what they thought, what their beliefs were, and I could produce the same result. This is how I lost my excess 30 pounds. I did the same thing in the financial area and in my personal relationships. So I began my pursuit of models of personal excellence, and in my own search for excellence, I studied every avenue I could find. Then I came across a science known as neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP for short. If you analyze it, the name comes from neuro, referring to the brain, and linguistic, referring to language. Programming is the installation of a plan or procedure. NLP is the study of how language, both verbal and nonverbal, affects our nervous system. Our ability to do anything in life is based upon our ability to direct our own nervous system. Those who are able to produce some outstanding result do so by producing specific communications to and through the nervous system. NLP studies how people communicate to themselves in ways that produce optimum resourceful states and thus create the largest number of behavioral choices. The name neuro-linguistic programming, although it is an accurate term for what the science is about, may also be responsible for the fact that you may never have heard of it before. In the past, it has primarily been taught to therapists and to a small number of fortunate business executives. When I was first exposed to it, I immediately realized it was something quite different from anything I had ever experienced before. I watched a practitioner of NLP take a woman who had been in therapy for over 3 years for phobic responses, and in less than 45 minutes, no more phobia. I was hooked. I had to know it all. By the way, many times the same result can be produced in 5 or 10 minutes. NLP provides a systematic framework for directing our own brain. It teaches us how to direct not only our own states and behaviors, but also the states and behaviors of others. In short, it is the science of how to run your brain in an optimal way to produce the results you desire. NLP provided exactly what I was looking for. It provided the key for unlocking the mystery of how certain people were able to consistently produce what I called optimum results. If someone else is able to wake up in the morning quickly and easily and full of energy, that is a result they produced. The next question is, how did they produce it? Since actions are the source of all results, what specific mental or physical actions produce the neurophysiological process of waking up from sleep quickly and easily? One of the presuppositions of NLP is that we all share the same neurology, so if anyone can do anything in the world, you can too, if you run your nervous system in exactly the same way. This process of discovering exactly and specifically what people do to produce a specific result is called modeling. Once again, the point is, if it's possible for others in the world, it's possible for you. It's not a matter of whether you can produce the results that another person produces. It's a matter of strategy. That is, how does that person produce the results? If someone is a terrific speller, there's a way to model him so you can be too, in a matter of 4 or 5 minutes. You'll learn this strategy in Chapter 7. If someone you know communicates perfectly with his kid, you can do the same thing. If someone finds it easy to wake up in the morning quickly, so can you. Simply model how other people direct their nervous systems. Obviously, some tasks are more complex than others and may take more time to model and then duplicate. However, if you have enough desire and the belief that will support you while continuing to adjust and change, virtually anything any human being does can be modeled. In many cases, a person may have spent years of trial and error to find the specific way to use his body or mind to produce a result. But you can step in, model the actions that took years to perfect, and produce similar results in a matter of moments, months, or at least in a lot less time than it took the person whose results you desire to duplicate. The two men primarily responsible for NLP are John Grinder and Richard Bandler. Grinder is a linguist, one of the most prominent in the world. Bandler is a mathematician, Gestalt therapist, and computer expert. The two men decided to pool their talents for a unique task, to go out and model the people who were the very best at whatever they did. They looked for people who were most effective at creating the one thing they felt most human beings wanted: change. They looked at successful businessmen, successful therapists, and others in order to distill the lessons and patterns those people had discovered through years of trial and error. Bandler and Grinder are best known for a number of effective behavioral intervention patterns that they codified in the modeling of Dr. Milton Erickson, one of the greatest hypnotherapists that ever lived, Virginia Satir, an extraordinary family therapist, and Gregory Bateson, an anthropologist. The two discovered, for example, how Satir was able to consistently produce relationship resolution where other therapists had failed. They discovered what patterns of actions she produced to create results, and they taught these patterns to their students, who were then able to apply them and to produce the same quality of results, even though they did not have the noted therapist's years of experience. They sowed the same seeds, so they reaped the same rewards. Working with the fundamental patterns they modeled from these three masters, Bandler and Grinder began to create their own patterns and to teach them as well. These patterns are commonly known as Neuro-Linguistic Programming, NLP. Chapter 2, Part B. These two geniuses did much more than provide us with a series of powerful and effective patterns for creating change. More important, they provided us with a systematic view of how to duplicate any form of human excellence in a very short period of time. Their success is legendary. However, even with the tools available, many people simply learned the patterns for creating emotional and behavioral change and never had the personal power to use them in an effective and congruent way. Once again, having the knowledge is not enough. Action is what produces results. As I read more and more books about NLP, I was amazed that I found little or nothing written about the process of modeling. To me, modeling is the pathway to excellence. It means that if I see anyone in this world producing a result I desire, I can produce the same results if I'm willing to pay the price of time and effort. If you want to achieve success, all you need to do is find a way to model those who have already succeeded. That is, find out what actions they took, specifically how they used their brain and body to produce the results you desire to duplicate. If you want to be a better friend, a richer person, a better parent, a better athlete, a more successful businessman, all you need to do is find models of excellence. The movers and shakers of the world are often professional modelers, people who have mastered the art of learning everything they can by following other people's experience rather than their own. They know how to save the one commodity none of us ever get enough of: time. In fact, if you look at the New York Times bestseller list, you'll find that most of the books at the top of the list contain models on how to do something more effectively. Peter Drucker's latest book is Innovation and Entrepreneurship. In it, Mr. Drucker outlines the specific actions one must take to be an effective entrepreneur and innovator. He makes it explicitly clear that innovation is a very special and deliberate process. There is nothing mysterious or magical about being an entrepreneur. It's not in the genetic makeup. It's a discipline that can be learned. Sound familiar? He's looked to as founder of modern business practices because of his modeling skills. The one-minute manager, Kenneth Blanchard and Spencer Johnson, is a model for human communication and simple and effective management of any human relationship. It was put together by modeling some of the most effective managers in the country. In Search of Excellence, Thomas J. Peters and Robert H. Waterman Jr. is obviously a book that provides a model of successful corporations in America. Bridge Across Forever, Richard Bach, provides another viewpoint, a new model of how to look at relationships. The list goes on and on. This book, too, is filled with a whole series of models on how to direct your mind, your body, and your communication with others in a way that will produce outstanding results for everyone involved. However, my goal for you is to not only learn these patterns of success, but also go beyond them by creating your own models. You can teach a dog patterns that will improve its behavior. You can do the same thing with people. But what I want you to learn is a process, a framework, a discipline that will allow you to duplicate excellence wherever you find it. I want to teach you some of the most effective patterns of NLP. However, I want you to become more than just an NP-er. I want you to become a modeler, someone who seizes excellence and makes it your own, someone in constant pursuit of optimum performance technologies, so you're not stuck, committed to any one series of systems or patterns, but instead are consistently looking for new and effective ways to produce the results you desire. To model excellence, you should become a detective, an investigator, someone who asks lots of questions and tracks down all the clues to what produces excellence. I've taught the best pistol marksmen in the US Army to shoot better by finding out the precise patterns of excellence in pistol shooting. I've learned the skills of a karate master by observing what they think and do. I've improved the performance of both professional and Olympic athletes. I did it by finding a way to precisely model what these men did when they produced their greatest results, and then showing them how they could trigger those performances on cue. Building from the successes of others is one of the fundamental aspects of most learning. In the world of technology, every advance in engineering or computer design follows naturally from earlier discoveries and breakthroughs. In the business world, companies that don't learn from the past, that don't operate with state-of-the-art information, are doomed. But the world of human behavior is one of the few areas that continues to operate from outmoded theories and information. Many of us are still using a 19th century model of how the brain works and how we behave. We put a label called depression on something, and guess what? We're depressed. The truth is, those terms can be self-fulfilling prophecies. This book teaches a technology that's readily available, a technology that can be used to create the quality of life you desire. Bandler and Grinder found that there are three fundamental ingredients that must be duplicated in order to reproduce any form of human excellence. They are really the three forms of mental and physical actions that correspond most directly to the quality of results we produce. Picture them as three doors leading up to a spectacular banquet hall. The first door represents a person's belief system. What a person believes, what he thinks is possible or impossible, to a great extent determines what he can or cannot do. There's an old phrase that says, whether you believe you can do something or you believe you can't, you're right. To a certain extent, it's true, for when you don't believe you can do something, you're sending your nervous system consistent messages that limit or eliminate your ability to produce that very result. If, on the other hand, you are consistently delivering to your nervous system congruent messages that say you can do something, then they signal your brain to produce the result you desire, and that opens up the possibility for it. So if you can model a person's belief system, you've taken the first step toward acting as he does, thus producing a similar type of result. We'll look at belief systems further in Chapter 4. The second door that must be opened is a person's mental syntax. Mental syntax is the way people organize their thoughts. Syntax is like a code. There are 7 digits in a phone number, but you have to dial them in the right order to reach the person you want. The same is true in reaching the part of your brain and nervous system that could most effectively help you get the outcome you desire. The same is true in communication. Many times people don't communicate well to each other because different people use different codes, different mental syntaxes. Unlock the codes, and you've gone through the second door toward modeling people's best qualities. We'll look at syntax in Chapter 7. The third door is physiology. The mind and body are totally linked. The way you use your physiology, the way you breathe and hold your body, your posture, facial expressions, the nature and quality of your movements, actually determines what state you are in. The state you're in then will determine the range and quality of the behaviors you're able to produce. We'll look further at physiology in Chapter 9. Actually, we're modeling all the time. How does a child learn to speak? How does a young athlete learn from an older one? How does an aspiring businessman decide to structure his company? Here's a simple modeling example from the business world. One way many people make a lot of money in this world is through what I call lag. We live in a culture that's consistent enough so that what works in one place will very often work in another. If someone has set up a successful business selling chocolate chip cookies at a mall in Detroit, chances are the same thing will work at a mall in Dallas. If someone in Chicago runs a business supplying people in preposterous costumes to deliver messages, chances are the same thing will work in Los Angeles or New York. All many people do to succeed in business is find something that works in one city and do the same thing somewhere else before the lag time is up. All you have to do is take a proven system and duplicate it, and maybe even better, improve upon it. People who do this are virtually guaranteed success. The world's greatest modelers are the Japanese. What's behind the dazzling miracle of the Japanese economy? Is it brilliant innovation? Sometimes. However, if you'll check the industrial history of the past 2 decades, you'll find that very few of the major new products or technological advances began in Japan. The Japanese simply take ideas and products that begin here, ranging anywhere from cars to semiconductors, and, through meticulous modeling, they've retained the best elements and improved on the rest. The man many people consider the richest in the world is Adnan Mohammed Khashoggi. How did he get that way? Simple. He modeled the Rockefellers, the Morgans, and others of like financial stature. He read everything he could about them, studied their beliefs, and modeled their strategies. Why was W. Mitchell able not just to survive, but to prosper from about as shattering an experience as a man could undergo? When he was in the hospital, friends read him examples of people who had overcome great obstacles. He had a model of possibility, and that positive model was stronger than the negative experiences he underwent. The difference between those who succeed and those who fail isn't what they have, it's what they choose to see and do with their resources and their experience of life. Through this same modeling process, I began to get immediate results both for myself and for others. I continued to seek out other patterns of thought and action that produced outstanding results in short periods of time. I call these combined patterns optimum performance technologies. These strategies make up the body of this book, but I want to make something clear. My goal, my outcome for you, is not just that you master the patterns I'm describing here. What you need to do is develop your own patterns, your own strategies. John Grinder taught me never to believe anything too much, for if you believe it, there will always be a place where it doesn't work. NLP is a powerful tool, but it is just that, a tool you can use to develop your own approaches, your own strategies, your own insights. No one strategy works all the time. Modeling is certainly nothing new. Every great inventor has modeled the discoveries of others to come up with something new. Every child has modeled the world around him. But the trouble is that most of us model on an utterly haphazard, unfocused level. We pick up random bits and pieces from this person or that, and then totally miss something much more important from someone else. We model something good here and something bad there. We attempt to model someone we respect, but find we don't really know how to do what he/she does. The meeting of preparation with opportunity generates the offspring we call luck. Anthony Robbins. Think of this as a guidebook for conscious modeling with greater precision, a chance for you to become conscious of something you've always been doing in your life. There are phenomenal resources and strategies all around you. My challenge to you is to start thinking like a modeler, continuously being aware of the patterns and types of actions that produce outstanding results. If someone is able to do something outstanding, the immediate question that should pop into your mind is, how does he create that result? I'd hope you would continue to look for excellence, for the magic in everything you see, and learn how it's produced, so that you can create the same kinds of results whenever you desire. The next thing we're going to explore is what determines our responses to the varying circumstances of life. Let us continue our study.